What you are about to witness is not a nature documentary. It is not a fairy tale. It is something that happened, something so raw, so extraordinary, that even the most seasoned wildlife rangers in the Limpopo bush country stood in silence when they saw it unfold. A zebra, 3 white lion cubs, and a bond that defied every law nature had ever written. The Limpopo lowveld stretches across southern Africa like a fever dream, burning gold in the dry season, swallowed by green walls of mopane and fever trees when the rains finally arrive. It is a landscape that does not forgive weakness. The soil is red, the sky is enormous, and life here has always moved according to one unbroken rule: the strong consume the weak, and the world keeps turning. It was early April, the tail end of the wet season, when the grass still stood shoulder high on a grown man, and the air carried the heavy sweetness of wild jasmine mixed with something older, earthier. The Mutlabatsi River had swelled its banks just enough to create dozens of shallow pools that drew animals from miles in every direction. At dusk, when the light turned the color of a dying ember, a lone zebra appeared at the largest of these pools. The rangers who first spotted her through their field glasses called her Zara, not an official name, just something they used among themselves. She was a mare, perhaps 8 years old, distinguished by a scar along her left flank, the kind left behind by a leopard's claw that had come close, but not close enough. Zara had been alone for 3 weeks. Her herd had moved on following a territorial shift caused by a pride of lions pushing south. She remained. Nobody could explain why. Animals in the wild rarely break from the herd without reason. The rangers assumed she was injured. They were wrong. She was waiting, though she could not have known it yet. On the 5th morning after the rangers first documented Zara at the river pool, one of them, a soft-spoken tracker named Dube, who had spent 31 years reading the bush, noticed something unusual in the reed bed approximately 40 meters from where she grazed. He raised his hand. The vehicle stopped. Everyone held their breath. There, half hidden inside a dense cluster of papyrus, were 3 small shapes. White shapes, impossibly white, like snow had fallen only in that one narrow strip of earth. White lion cubs. 3 of them, 2 females and 1 male, the team would later confirm. Rare beyond measure. White lions are not albinos, but carry a recessive gene that occurs perhaps once in a generation across the entire population. Their eyes were the color of pale ice. They were thin. Their mother was nowhere. The rangers did not move. They did not speak. They watched. And then they watched Zara walk toward them. Every instinct in every human body sitting in that vehicle told them this was wrong. Lions, white or otherwise, are the primary predators of zebra across the African savanna. Zara should have bolted. Her nostrils should have caught their scent and sent her crashing through the tall grass in a thunder of hooves. Instead, she stopped 3 meters from the reed bed, lowered her head, and made a sound none of them had ever heard a zebra make, a low, resonant vibration, almost too deep to be real, like a note held at the bottom of a cello. The smallest cub crawled forward. Zara did not move. The days that followed were documented in over 200 hours of field footage that rangers and researchers from 2 separate wildlife foundations reviewed without reaching a clean scientific conclusion. What the footage showed was this: Zara adopted the cubs. Not metaphorically, not at a comfortable distance. She let them sleep against her body at night. She used her muzzle to push them back toward shelter when storms rolled in off the escarpment. She stood over them in the heat of midday, her striped shadow forming a kind of tent across their white fur. When predators, jackals, a lone hyena, once a subadult male lion, approached, Zara placed herself between them and the cubs with a stillness that was more terrifying than any charge. She did not run. She did not flinch. She simply became a wall. The cubs fed on what they could find: insects, frogs, the occasional small lizard. Zara could not feed them what their bodies truly needed, but she gave them everything else: warmth, proximity, the sound of a heartbeat that said, "You are not alone in this world." Dude sat with his journal one evening and wrote something that would later be quoted in a wildlife research paper. She did not love them because they were lions. She loved them because they were abandoned, and she understood what abandoned felt like. Nobody asked him how he knew that. They all suspected the answer had something to do with his own story, a childhood cut short, a family scattered. Some knowledge lives in the body long before the mind finds words for it. Weeks passed. The cubs grew stronger. Their white coats thickened. They began to move with a coordination that surprised everyone. They would fan out around Zara in a loose triangle when walking, instinctively falling into a formation that looked, from a distance, almost like a pride moving with its matriarch. But the turning point came on a Tuesday morning in early June, when the grass had dried to pale wheat and the river had shrunk back to a silver thread. A rival group of 3 male lions, large, battle-scarred, territorial, had moved into the area. They were known to the rangers. They had killed before. Not just prey, other lions, cubs especially. The males picked up the scent trail near the river and followed it with the slow, deliberate confidence of animals that have never had cause for fear. Dubé's team was already in position, having tracked the males since dawn. They watched through their lenses as the confrontation became inevitable. The 3 white lion cubs were resting in a dry creek bed. Zara stood between them and the approaching males, 40 meters of open ground separating her from 3 lions that together outweighed her by nearly 4 times. The lead male, a vast black-maned animal, slowed when he saw her. This was unusual behavior for him. He stopped entirely when she did not retreat. He circled left. She turned with him. He circled right. She turned again. What happened next took 11 seconds. The other 2 males began to flank around the right side. Zara saw it. She dropped her head low, almost to the ground, a posture the rangers had never observed in a zebra before. And she screamed. Not a whinny, not a bark, a full-throated, chest-deep scream that sent birds exploding from every tree within 200 meters and brought the entire bush to sudden, electric silence. The 3 white cubs rose and ran, into the creek bed, into the deep thicket beyond it. Gone. The lead male charged. Zara ran, but not away. She ran parallel to the males, drawing them sideways, away from the direction the cubs had fled, her black and white body a blur of purpose. She ran with everything she had. She ran until the males abandoned the chase at the tree line, winded, confused, their prey having somehow vanished into the landscape. Zara circled back 40 minutes later. The cubs were waiting in the thicket. She pushed her muzzle against each one in turn. Dubé did not write in his journal that evening. He sat outside and looked at the sky for a long time. The 3 white lion cubs were eventually relocated by the Wildlife Foundation to a protected conservancy with a strong gene pool and full veterinary support, a decision that was painful to witness but necessary for their survival into adulthood. The process took 3 carefully managed days. Zara was monitored throughout. On the morning of the 3rd day, when the transport crates had been closed and the vehicle began to move slowly down the dirt road, Zara followed it. She followed it for nearly 2 kilometers, at a walk, at a trot, silent, until the road bent through a stand of leadwood trees and the vehicle disappeared from sight. She stood at that bend for a long time. Then she turned and walked back toward the river. A year later, field researchers confirmed that all 3 white lion cubs had survived into adolescence at the conservancy, healthy, thriving. The 2 females had already begun to show signs of the social bonding behaviors that would in time allow them to form their own pride. The male had been noted for an unusual calmness around other species, a quality the researchers found difficult to quantify but impossible to ignore. And Zara? Zara was found the following wet season back at the Motlabatsi pools within a newly formed herd of 7 mares, grazing in the tall grass, her scarred flank catching the late afternoon light, her eyes quiet and forward-facing, watching the water. Justice, if it can be called that in a world without courts, looked like this. 3 lives that should not have survived, did. A mother made from nothing but instinct and stubborn love. A scar on a flank that no predator had ever managed to deepen. The bush does not offer happy endings, but sometimes, just sometimes, It offers something better. It offers proof. If this story moved you, hit like and subscribe. Stories like Zara's deserve to be heard by every person on this earth. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. The wild has more to say, and we will be here to listen.